Right, good day, John, Gemma, Luke, Rufus, the dog, I think the dog's named George, and the cat. Please correct me on the name of the animals in the video. I'm here to introduce you to a very cool Lego build. It's the Saturn V rocket, which I enjoyed a lot building, and it's pretty cool. And you might have seen this rocket or heard about it from the Apollo missions. And those are the missions that took a man to the moon, like Neil Armstrong, probably heard of him. But very cool program. It started in the late 60s. I think it was because President Kennedy wanted to compete against the Russians and beat the Russians to the moon. And this is the result of a nationwide effort to build the biggest rocket possible. And I think it's so cool. So I'm going to go through the whole launch sequence in the orbit. But first I just want to say, sorry this video is a bit long and technical, but don't fall asleep. The rocket's designed in different stages basically. And the reason for that is because it takes a lot of thrust and energy to get an object into orbit above the atmosphere where it's falling around the Earth and not falling back down to Earth. So what they realized is it takes a ton of fuel, a ton of thrust, and what they realized is like rather than having the rocket together the whole time, when you're done burning the fuel, and each stage is just a giant fuel tank basically, that you need to discard the stage, and that helps reduce the weight, and you need less thrust, less fuel to take less weight in orbit, force equals mass times acceleration. So let's do a launch. So they go 10, 9. At 9, the boosters fire up, and the Easter Bunny is usually not there, but it's Easter. You probably wouldn't want to be there because it's hot. So at about 8.9 seconds, the boosters fire up. These are called J1 boosters. These are, I think to this date, the largest engines ever built. They produce incredible amount of force. It's like 6.5 newtons of force. So tons of force. So at 9 seconds, these light up. They ignite it. And it takes 9 seconds before it starts to leave the launch pad. And there's a little crane. And then it just and then it starts to accelerate up. And it takes another 10 to 12 seconds for it to go past the launch pad. And it's 110 meters high. So it just looks like it's fumbling. Everyone's kind of worried. And then it launches up. And the first stage, as it's burning, takes 2 minutes and 41 seconds, and at 42 miles, 68 kilometers, it's going 6,000 miles an hour, so it's going fast finally. It enters stage 2, and stage 2 is basically where, gotta be a little careful here, where the stage 1 breaks off. So it's going, stage 1 breaks off and is discarded and falls back to Earth. It falls in the ocean. They make sure it's over the ocean. And this stage was powered, the fuel, it's just a giant fuel tank, by kerosene and liquid oxygen. Those are the fuel. So now we're on the second stage, and this stage burns for a little bit less. I think it's, it burns for 6 minutes and up to 175 kilometers above the Earth, going 15,000 miles an hour. That's quick. I think 15,000 miles. So after that stage, the third stage ignites and separates, and this falls back to Earth. So at this point, we're getting pretty close. There's only one J1 rocket. Oh, I want to introduce my wife, Lauren. She's the camerawoman. What would you like to say?
Who's in the rocket? Why is it going up?
Yeah. So I failed to mention, before liftoff on the tower, they load some astronauts in the command module, and I think they're sitting up like that. And their experience is very interesting. It's a very violent, powerful, got to be the coolest feeling in the world to be on 15,000 miles an hour. So now we're in the third stage, and you notice there's, hence Saturn V, there were 5 of these J1 engines, and the second stage had 5 of the J2 engines, and they're much smaller. I think they produce about 1/5 of as much thrust. So I mean, you need a ton of thrust in the third stage to get the thing accelerating, and against gravity and air. As you get higher, there's less air, but it takes an insane amount of energy just to get the first part. And now we're going really fast, we're accelerating, and we only need 1 J1 engine. And then this, before we get to orbit, it burns for 2.5, let me make sure I got it right, 2.5 minutes, and until it reaches at the altitude of 103 nautical miles, which is called its parking orbit. So now it's in space. So now we can kind of float around space. And there you have it. That's how you get a man into space. I think I'm going to bore you guys. The next video...
Why don't you talk about the Lego portion of the build?
Then we'll do that in the next video. The next video we're going to talk about being in the parking orbit and delivering this to the moon. And before, okay, I'll talk about the Lego build. Was very fun. It went kind of fast, but interesting. My favorite feature, we always have our favorite feature, is this little piece. It's called the launch escape system. And I always thought it was just like a little antenna or something weird looking. But this is really cool because the astronauts are in here. If there's a problem during the launch, this has a little engine in it, and it can shoot the module up. They can abort the mission, and it'll shoot them. It's like a parachute or ejection seat basically, and it'll shoot them away from the rocket, which is having issues and is gonna fall back to Earth, and then they can return safely to Earth and open their parachute. And we'll go over that. We'll go on the return in more detail in the next video. See you guys.